Well, our story begins on February 28th, 2008. We went into the Brigham and Women's Hospital. My wife had gone through the 9-month pregnancy period, and she was going to be induced for labor. It was what we thought was going to be a fairly normal day, and we were going to come home with a baby a couple of days later. Little did we know that in a few hours, our lives would be turned upside down. The delivery started as normal. They induced her. She started to go through the normal process of pushing the baby out, and it looked like everything was going just fine until my wife noticed that something had gone wrong, that there was no longer a heartbeat from the machine that was positioned to the left of her, the baby's heartbeat. At that point, she pointed it out to the doctor, and the doctor at that time tried to do what they could do, but they didn't think it was an issue, didn't think it was a problem. So we ended up continuing with the delivery. By the time the baby came out, it was our worst nightmare. 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes had gone by. They were able to get the baby onto an artificial breathing apparatus, but they were having difficulty getting the heart going. Eventually they did, and they rushed the baby out of the room, and 30 people invaded our room. And as I said, our lives were turned upside down. Little did we know that my wife had suffered a ripped uterus on that table at the exact same time. We would discover that about 2 or 3 hours later, and she would be dealing with a serious medical issue as well. So at that point, they rushed the baby out. They come back and talk to us 20 minutes later. They tell us there's problems, and because of no oxygen, no heartbeat, the baby probably went without oxygen and a heartbeat for maybe 20 plus minutes. And in that case, there was more likely than not brain damage. I went down to a separate unit, sat down, and they brought over the head doctor from the Children's Hospital neonatal. And at that point, they gave us our options. And the option that they gave us was to do nothing and take our chances, which they did not think would turn out to be a great ending. Or what we could do is we could try a newer treatment that they had, which was taking the baby, putting the baby on a cooling unit. Now, this cooling blanket would drop the temperature of her body to 92.3 degrees. It would, in essence, stop the brain from sending out false signals, and it would give her a chance now of being able to be a normal child. At that point, I said, well, what other options are there? And they said, there are none. And then I said, well, what are the risks? And they said, well, we've had some success here, but it's a relatively newer treatment when it comes to newborn babies. The one thing they did do, knowing that I was a sports guy, is that they reminded me that Kevin Everett, the Buffalo Bills football player who had been paralyzed out on the field, had had a similar type of treatment. A little bit different in that they put the cold saline right into the body, but very similar technique, certainly the same principles. And I knew that he was walking. So at that point, I felt pretty confident that this was the only direction we could go in. So then they told us they had to test her to see if she was okay to do the procedure. They did, and within 20 minutes later, they rushed her over to the Children's Hospital. They immediately put her on the cooling blanket. They dropped her temperature to 92.3 degrees, and then it was a waiting game. 3 days. We had to sit there and watch her wrapped up in all sorts of diodes and wires, and 3 days later, when they slowly brought the temperature back up, we had to sit there and wait and find out whether her various bodily functions would operate. And trust me, it's painful when you're sitting there and they tell you 8 hours from now, we need to see her pee on her own. And if she doesn't, we've got a kidney problem. 7.5 hours into it, my daughter decided she would finally pee. And that was a little frightening when you get down to the last 30 minutes and you're sitting there saying, come on, come on. But slowly but surely, we started to see in that 4th day those various body systems be rebooted and start to come to life. But we still did not know how much brain damage she had suffered. They did an immediate MRI. They detected there was brain damage. It was a matter of now how quickly would that brain repair itself. And the one thing that we did learn is that in newborn babies, the brain and the body do remarkable things, and that the brain can repair itself. I remember getting that phone call. We were scheduled that following Thursday, which would have been 8 days after the 8 days after the birth, I believe. When they were ready to do the next MRI, we were scheduled to go in there at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning. They were going to give us the latest MRI reports. They had done them on Wednesday. I get a call late on Wednesday night, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. I look at the caller ID. Oh my God, it's Children's Hospital. Never good to get a phone call at 10:30 or 11 o'clock. Lo and behold, it happened to be the doctor. Picked up the phone. Obviously, the doctor sensed that I had panic in my voice and said, "Don't worry, everything's fine, everything's fine. The reason I called you is I wanted to let you know so that you could get a good night's sleep before tomorrow morning's meeting. We just got the MRI results back, and your baby has shown remarkable improvement, maybe 80 or 90%. We would have been happy with 30 or 35%. At that point, we were feeling pretty good about the situation. The baby remained in the hospital for a total of 3 weeks. My wife remained in the hospital as well, next door, a separate hospital. She was in there for close to 3 weeks. And I'm thoroughly convinced, after going through this process, that had it not been for this cooling unit and this cooling blanket by a company called Cincinnati Sub-Zero that we got to know quite well after we went through this ordeal. And we wanted to find out exactly what this unit was all about and how this unit worked and how this unit saved our baby's life. I'm thoroughly convinced that, one, my baby daughter, who is over a year old now, would not be alive had it not been for that blanket. And certainly her quality of life, I am convinced, would have been much diminished. And right now I'm happy to say that she's over a year of age and she is performing like a normal child her age. Seems to be able to do every function that you would expect from a kid of that age. And I don't think without this cooling unit, this technology from Cincinnati Sub-Zero, I'm not sure I would be sitting here telling you the same thing.